Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would clarify my stance on something because I've had a lot of people say, Jason, you were in keto for a while, you were kind of pro keto again, but you're over to really high carbs. And I've been back over to higher carbs for a long time. It was a case of where I just over time started shifting and adding more carbs, and now I've gotten to a point to where, having experimented, I've reached my own conclusions with my training and how I respond to training. But my point on keto is that I don't hold a negative nor a super positive view of keto diets. I think for a lot of people they can be great. I don't think, and this is based upon my view of the literature, blood work, everything else, I don't think people who follow non-junk food keto diets are at risk of heart disease. And if anything, because it can help with a lot of the mitigating factors, it could actually reduce your chance. When we look at that really elevated LDL cholesterol, which is a concern for atherosclerosis, it seems to be in check if you don't do silly stuff like add butter to everything, right? If you're generally getting your fat from meats and things like that, and you're not going super hard in the refined fats, again, like butter. And I want people to understand, they're like, but dairy fat's fine. Dairy fat is fine in the context of a normal balanced diet. Adding 600 calories of butter is an enormous amount of just dairy fat you're adding on top of an already high fat diet. That is not the same thing. And I know doctors who have clients out there who discuss this, who are even in the fitness world, who mention that the people who add lots of butter and things like that to their diet on a keto diet tend to have worse lipid profiles. Okay, let's make that clear. That's pretty well understood. But generally, a balanced keto diet, where you're living on stuff like steak, eggs, vegetables, assuming you get plenty of vegetables and everything, probably reasonably fine. You can throw some cheese and stuff in, but whole food diets that are generally based around meat, dairy, vegetables, okay, they're generally fine. Again, assuming you get adequate salt intake and everything else. If your salts get too low, you can run into problems on these diets. I don't think it's a big deal from a health perspective. I would argue from a satiety perspective, I loved the keto diets. In terms of me just feeling full, enjoying really and truly enjoying the taste of my food, those really high fat foods, I think they work great. I think they're great for adherence, and I found that I didn't really crave carbohydrates and things like that. As far as just hitting my target calories, I found it was relatively easy to stay consistent with keto. Thought it was relatively easy. Now, people who are like, but Jason, didn't you gain weight? I gained weight adding a gallon of milk a day. And as people noted, it hasn't been really significant, that much body fat. I did a mild cutting, and I'm back to as lean as I was before, and a little bit heavier in terms of body weight. So I've gained muscle. But what I found is that it was easy to hit target calories. Adherence was easy. Satiety, enjoyment of the food was really good. And so I would say those are the strong points of a keto diet. Those are the strong points if you can thrive on it. Not everyone can. But what I would say with a diet like that, doing stuff like that, oh, I just want to lose it. Well, that's silly. A keto diet like that's something you would do probably as a longer term endeavor. And they do work really, really well for the morbidly obese. People who have insulin resistance, and you'll see even good nutrition experts out there, even I've seen even Aragon admit this, that people who are morbidly obese with insulin resistance actually do seem to have a mild metabolic and fat loss advantage on a keto diet, on really, really low carb diets, until their insulin resistance is resolved. And then the advantage seems to go away. Okay, then the advantage is gone. So let's make that clear. The advantage to it disappears once your insulin resistance is better. For me personally, I have found, because of the type of training I do, that a lot of people like Volek and everyone's data on the really high fat, and they're like, well, all these marathon runners and everyone else, they were fine and they had good glycogen preservation once they were fat adapted. That's all well and good. That's true. I'm not an endurance athlete. I'm a strength athlete. So even for me, my conditioning work tends to burn a lot of glycogen, glucose. Okay. It burns through it. . And as I started doing higher and higher volumes of training, I found I needed more carbs. And then when I went into my small deficit, in which I've lost, what, 10 pounds, 11 pounds over a few months, I found my ability to hit PRs and to train at the training volumes that I want. I need higher and higher and higher carbohydrate. Okay. I found that my body works just like many of the top experts say it should. Okay, I'm not a special unique snowflake. That ultra high carbohydrate diets are what athletes, particularly athletes who do a lot of volume of fairly intense work, which we can't just burn fat for fuel. Right? A marathon, you can burn mostly fat. Doing a 4-hour cardio session, you can burn mostly fat. Everything else, it's carbs. And what I find, it's not just about the training fuel when we train. It has to do with recovery, nutrient partitioning, everything else. Okay? It has to do with all of that. So if my dietary fat's fairly low, I tend to tap into body fat a little easier once I'm resting. But all my training is going to need carbohydrate. And then we deal with glycogen replenishment. Right? I'm running conjugate. And my training sessions have gotten higher and higher volume. And then that's not counting all the restoration work, the sled dragging, GPP, everything else. People forget that too. I do sometimes 150 plus reps of reverse hypers, band press downs, all those things on my off days, in addition to dragging a sled, doing plyometric work, abs, grip training. Those are my off days. And I'm doing a lot of times 20 plus sets of supplemental work on max effort and speed days, right? So I find that I need more and more carbs. And what I'm finding is that my training sessions go better. If I've been carb loading heavy, even if I'm not at a surplus, even if I'm at maintenance or a very, very small deficit, which is generally where I'm at, I teeter between those two. I find that if my carbohydrates are very, very high, not only do I have the work capacity to finish my workouts and still actually be fairly strong deep into those training sessions, or even if I split it up, you know, with little breaks in between. A lot of times I take a midway break and then come back in 30 minutes or so, or 45 minutes, and do the other half of my workouts. It's not uncommon for me. I write my own schedule, train at home, not a big deal. Both my businesses are at home. So I find that not only do the sessions go better, but my overall recovery is better. Because when I'm hammering carbs, and I'm not talking about junk carbs, I'm not sitting around eating table sugar and pixie sticks. You know, it's brown rice, oats, potatoes, fruit. That if I'm eating carbs as my predominant macronutrient, that I recover faster. I recover better. And it's because my glycogen doesn't really particularly get depleted. Even if I do those hard training sessions and I end up eating 200 to 300 grams of carbs right after, I'm replenished again. Like, I'm good to go. So my glycogen stores tend to stay a lot fuller. It helps with recovery. I bounce back between sessions more, and the little mini workouts and things that we oftentimes do after our main session, and then our restoration work and GPP work and stuff on off days, which is normal in this training system. I just seem to be recovered for all of it. I handle all of it better. In other words, exactly what's reported with most serious athletes. A higher carbohydrate diet is better for athletes. Okay? It's better for athletes. We have better work capacity, better recovery. And what I found to be true, having messed with all the different things, is that the higher my carbohydrates go, the more true this is. In fact, I don't even eat insane amounts of protein. So if anything, you know, I've had people say, well, is your current diet? My current diet's not extreme. Living on whole grains, fruits and vegetables, and then adding in lean sources of animal protein, lean meats and lean dairy is not an extreme diet. It's just carb heavy, but then again, we know that humans thrive in a natural environment of carb heavy. And it's largely unrefined carbohydrates. It's a pretty balanced approach. Not extreme at all just because it's very carb heavy. That's what most nutritionists tell people to do. But I think people confuse carb heavy with, are you eating tons of table sugar? Well, that's not what I'm doing. I don't have any table sugar in my house. You know, vacations, social settings, things like that, I'll have things like that. I don't have them in my house. I go weeks at a time without eating any of them. So it's largely unrefined carbs, just whole foods. I find that I do better the higher I take my carbohydrates, even if I start cutting a little protein and fat and everything back a bit, just to get more carbs in, I tend to do better. My training is better, my recovery is better. Doesn't mean I don't think keto diets have merit in the right situations. They certainly do. I'm not anti-keto. I just find that for my personal needs, I'm doing a lot better, and everyone agrees these days I'm leaner, stronger, everything else, when I use more carbohydrate. And it has to do with my workloads. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.